Little roller up along first. Behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it.
A 2-1 pitch. And a drive in the air to deep right field. That ball headed toward the wall. That ball is out of here. Out of here. A game-winning grand slam home run off the bat of Robin Ventura.
Hey. And it's hit deep to left center. Andrew Jones on the run. This one has a chance. Home run. Mike Piazza, and the Mets lead 3-2.
High fly ball to left. Back at the wall, and the captain's going deep to the right.
Turner drives one to center, chasing Nimmo back to the warning track right at the fence. He made the catch. Oh, wow! The catch of the year from Brandon Nimmo. He took a home run away from Justin Turner.
Wow. Welcome to the Say Hello podcast. My name is Casey Lynn, and I am joined by my co-host Bill Pulsifer. And today we have a very, very special guest, none other than former Mets manager, the longest tenured Mets manager in Mets history, Terry Collins. How are you doing today, Terry? And thank you.
I'm doing great,
on.
Casey. Thanks for having me on. Bill, great to see you as always.
Great to see you too, TC. What a pleasure to have you on, man. Thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
That's all right. My pleasure. It's good to see you.
The accolades for Terry: Pirates bullpen coach, manager of the Astros and the Angels. He's a member of the Buffalo Hall of Fame, former manager of the Oryx Buffaloes in Japan, manager of the 2009 Chinese WBC team. That is amazing. I'd like to talk about that a little bit later. And like I mentioned before, the longest tenure Met manager in Mets history, and he has the second most wins in Mets history as manager as well. So Bill and I are way excited to have you on today, Terry.
Well, thanks, Casey. I got to tell you, I remember Bill when, he was part of that big Fab Three, Isringhausen, Pulsifer, and Wilson. And I mean, they were all nasty. They were all nasty. And so it's great to be around him. I get to spend some time with him at these fantasy camps we have down here. And he's, as you know, he's a blast. He's fun to be around. He's got a tremendous sense of humor, and he makes the camp great he makes his presence in the camp. Guys love it. So it's wonderful to see him.
Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to see you every fall as well and get to spend a little bit of time together. Even though we're tutti fruities for little after hours every once in a while.
After hours. We're allowed to do that, Bill. We're 21.
Generation K is what you're referring to. I had that poster on my wall growing up. Little did I know that, a couple decades later, Bill and I would be hosting a podcast, but Izzy, Bill, and Paul Wilson, Generation K, where I always tease Bill with his goatee and his sideburns back in, 93, 94? Or
95 was when he first came up. That was when the big league hype started, but I guess it started a few years prior to that on the way up.
Yeah, Bill was styling back then with that poster.
I tried.
So before we kick things off, Bill and I, we like to, this is episode 38, we just like to go through the numbers in Mets history of players and managers that have worn that number of the episode. So Roger Craig wore number 38 as a Met. Unfortunately for him, he's remembered as he lost 20 games in a row for the 62 and 63 Mets. But
hey, you know what? Can I say something about that?
Please.
You got to be pretty good in order to get the ball 20 consecutive times to get those losses, though. At some point in time, they take the ball away from you if you're not doing something right, So he must have been doing something right to keep getting the ball every 5 days.
Al Jackson. I know both of you know Al very well. He wore it from 1967 to 69. I know both of you, I'm sure, have, Al Jackson is beloved in the Mets community. For sure. And then you got Rick Aguilera, 86 to 89. And then this is the era of Bill, I think. Do you remember Dave Telgater, Bill?
Yeah. We didn't play together in the big leagues. He was just a little bit ahead of me, but absolutely no Gator.
Okay. And then we got Dave Malicki from 1995 to 98. He started that first interleague game between the Mets and Yankees. Yep. And then the Terry Collins era, where, let's see if Terry, these are all the players that wore 38 under you, Terry. All right. Chris Capuano in 2011.
Right.
We got Garrett Olson, wore number 38 in 2012.
Wow.
Sean Markham, 2013. And the last one, Vic Black, 2014.
Great. No, Vic Black had a great arm. He was a great arm. And Chris Capuano was one of my favorite people. Just one of those kind of guys who went out there and pitched and, knew what he had to do to get people out and pounded the strike zone. You never had, when he got the ball, you didn't have to worry about him beating himself. They're going to have to get hits to beat him.
Yeah, I remember those guys very well. And just to round out the list, Justin Wilson wore it from 2019 to 20. And right now, from 22 to literally today, Tyler McGill wears number 38.
Can I throw one more in there that I wanted to throw in? And it's kind of a little bit special because TC's here today, too.
Please.
He goes to our fantasy camp guy. And that's Mr. Buzz Capra wore number 38 as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Buzz.
You know what? They can't run a fantasy camp unless Buzz is there.
That's right.
I mean, it won't be the same. It won't ever be the same.
Absolutely.
Well, there you go. The number 38 for the New York Mets in history. Terry, I wanted to just dive in. We'll start earlier in your professional career, if you will. We know that you were in the Dodgers organization, but you were a bullpen coach for the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1992 and 1993. Now, what people don't remember is Barry Bonds was on that team, and he won the MVP in 1992, and then in 1993 he went on to San Francisco. So I wanted to get your thoughts on seeing arguably the best player in baseball history, put PED steroids and all that aside, but you got up close and personal with watching a 7-time All-Star, and I believe that was his first one in Pittsburgh in 1992. Skinny Barry Bonds, 1992. That must have been a thrill.
Well, the other thing, the previous years before that, I was a AAA manager for the Pirates, so I went to the major leagues each year. And so my locker in the clubhouse in Pittsburgh, now the coaches back then dressed in the locker room with the players. So there was Bobby Bonilla at one, and then there was Barry, then there was me, then there was Milt May, and then all the coaches around those. So I locker next to Barry for basically 4 years.
Wow.
And so, we became very, very good friends. And not to me, he is without a question one of the greatest players who ever played the game. I don't care what anybody says. We can get into what happened late in his career, but this guy, I'm telling you, this guy could do anything. There were nights, Casey, when in 92, Hojo had hit a homer for the Mets the night before, and the next day the players would tell Andy or Jay Bell or Gary Reedus or whoever's ever on, hey, you guys got to get on today because Barry's going to hit a home run today because he's not going to let Howard Johnson get that far ahead of him, and I'll be a son of a gun if Barry didn't hit one that day. I saw this guy walk up to the greats. Lee Smith one day, we're playing the Cardinals. Before the game, Barry walked over to Lee Smith. He said, I'm just going to tell you right now, you don't want to face me tonight. Not tonight.
Wow.
And sure enough, in the 9th inning, Lee Smith would come in the game and Barry hit one in the second deck in Pittsburgh. He was arguably the best player that I have ever seen play.
You saw a lot of great players as well. You managed Jeff Bagwell.
Bagwell.
And he was hitting 368 before the strike, and he got his injured hand. 368. Come on. And that was August, I believe, right?
And look at the home runs. I think he had 39 or 40 homers back then, too, at the time.
So he's hitting basically 370 with, 40 home runs in August. Unbelievable.
Those are some special numbers, right? You don't see those numbers anymore. That's
Bill, you don't. And, of course, there's 100 reasons why. But, you just don't see those anymore. But, I spent, when I left managing in Houston, I got the job in Anaheim. It was my first time ever in the American League. So and being in the same division as the Mariners, I got to see Junior play.
Yeah.
So, I got to come right from seeing Barry for a lot of years to then watch Junior play. And I'll tell you what, man, that could be a debate of who's the best.
Yeah.
Some pretty swings there. Some really beautiful left-handed swings.
Ooh.
I don't know if that debate, that could be days worth of, debating on Barry Bonds or Ken Griffey Jr.,
Yeah.
Because Barry, as you know, he could field too with all those gold gloves. Ken Griffey was more flashy in center field, but oh man, that is a great debate.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, Barry went to left field because they got Andy.
Yes,
I mean,
right.
Barry could fly. If Barry wanted to, he could have stole 45, 50 bases a year. But, and play center field. But when you play on that turf, man, you got to take care of your legs a little bit. So even Junior, he could have scored. He could have stole some bases. But that turf beat your legs up. So when we got Andy and they moved Barry to left field, all of a sudden, Barry said, "I'll just take the line, and Bobby, you take that right field line, and Andy, you got all the rest. So go get him."
He wasn't that bad out there either. He was a hell of an outfielder.
He was a great outfielder. Yeah.
Yeah, you had some good teams back there in 92. So I wanted to ask, you were there with the Pirates 92, 93, and then you made the jump to manage the Astros, from bullpen coach to manager of the Astros. That had to be, can you take us through that of how, that process unfolded?
Well, I will actually tell you the whole story. When I was the AAA manager for the Pirates in Buffalo, I was in spring training one year, and the players were locked out, and I really got to know Jim Leland then, because back then I kind of ran spring training as the AAA manager. So I spent a lot of time with Jim, and at the end, when they let the players back in, Jim said to me, "Let me tell you something." He said, "I don't make a promise to anybody, but the next job on my staff, you're going to get it." And the next year, Gene Lamont got the job in Chicago, and they called me up, and I thought, and as Jim will tell you, he told me, "Hey, you're going to coach third, this and that," but he had made a promise that he forgot to Rich Donnelly, and that Rich would be the third base coach. And so I go all winter long thinking I'm the third base coach, and sure enough, as we're getting close to spring training, Jim called me and said, "Listen, I really messed up here, but I had made this promise to Rich that I forgot, and I'm going to live by it." So that's when I went as the bullpen coach. And by the way, the only thing I did in that bullpen was answer the phone and catch guys like Pulsar warming up. And that wasn't fun. But because I did it, and I did a lot of it, Mike LaValliere, who was our catcher, he took care of me. Man, he gave me gloves, he gave me shin guards. He took good care of me because I was warming up everybody at that time. But I didn't teach any pitching, I can tell you that.
That's a hell of a story and a hell of a jump. Bill actually made his pitching debut in Houston, I believe, right?
No, at Shea
it was at Shea, but against the Houston Astros, and we've been over the lineup that he faced and all your guys.
My first strikeout was that 370 hitter, actually, so I'll wear that with.
Was it Bagwell? You struck out Bagwell for your first strikeout? Wow!
And Biggio was my first home run that I gave up.
Oh man!
Yeah. Well, I tell you, we had in '94 before that strike hit. We were a half a game out of first place, and we had lost Jeff a little bit, but we had Sid Bream, who we had signed, and so we were, even though he wasn't Jeff, we still were pretty good. Yeah. But our pitching was just starting to come around. Shane Reynolds was just starting to come into the light. We had Drabek was pitching better, Swindell was pitching better, and we had moved Todd Jones into the closer role with Dave Veers, and we had a young left-handed pitcher named Mike Hampton down there as a rookie in the bullpen, who was also, sneaking his way into that rotation. So it's really a sad deal that strike hit, because we really had a good team.
Yeah, that was quite the year for the Expos and the Houston Astros that year. But I hate to skip all the way to this day in baseball history from talking about 92, 94, but it just so happens that whenever our listeners are either watching on YouTube, and please hit that subscribe button at Say Hello Media, and also Terry's podcast, I'm a big fan of it. Terry, if you want to, I'd be remiss if you want to just tell everybody how to find your podcast, as well as I've listened to every interview you've had. Please take the floor on this one.
Well, I had some calls, and I started this podcast. It's called the Terry Collins Show, and as we talk about, we talk baseball stuff, and we talk about some history stuff for the Mets. We talk about local Mets, and then we tell stories. We try to let the fans know, some of the stuff that happened, behind the scenes. We're going to have the next podcast is going to be with Sandy Alderson, who, put that to 2015 together. And my first question today was, what the heck did we do in 2015 that you said, okay, let's make a run at this thing. And so it was amazing how he went about it. But yeah, I had a great run in New York. And, Casey and I will tell you, I have been friends with all the great managers. I mean, I managed against Joe Torre when he was in St. Louis. And, Joe was a tremendous guy. He got real smart in New York. Really, really smart. Really brilliant. And, Buck, I talked to Buck a lot. Same thing, and I asked Jim Leland when I was coaching for him, I said, so what changes did you make from when you got the job in 86? What differences have you made managing now here in 2019? No, I'm sorry. This would have been
way back when.
Yeah, way back when.
Yeah.
92. I'm sorry, 92.
Yeah.
And he said, I'll tell you the differences I've made. I now write Barry Bonds' name in the lineup instead of Jason. Yeah. So, make no mistake about it. It's all about the fact that you get quality players, because I will tell you, Casey, I don't care what all the numbers say, how you interpret any of them, talent wins. Talent will always win at this level. And so when you got it, at the end of the day, the team with good talent is going to be in the hunt.
You mentioned, before we get to what happened on this day back when you were managing the Mets, you mentioned Joe Torre. Joe Torre actually has the record for most ejections in Mets history by a manager. That I was shocked to find that out, because he didn't manage long. I thought you were number one. I don't know how you.
I thought Bobby V would be number one of all the guys. For heaven's sakes, of all the guys,
he has the most masqueraded thrown out of it.
Right. Yeah, I was shocked. Joe Torre had 24 in his Mets tenure. Terry Collins 20, and like Bobby V, I believe he had a 17. So
wow.
That you mentioned Joe Torre, so you just got reminded me.
Yeah.
Can't go back and beat that record, though. But
no, I don't care to.
Yeah,
I don't care to anymore.
But
good for you.
On this day, so here we're gonna go. So a little Met talk right here, Terry. So to our listeners, wherever they're, whatever day they're watching, the day that we're recording this, it was June 18th, 2012. And Terry, you remember two things happened on these days, back-to-back years, that were huge. For the second consecutive game, R.A. Dickey threw a one-hitter. In his incredible two starts, Dickey struck out 25 batters, and he held opponents to a 0.35, 0.68, 0.35 slash line, and he continued his streak of 42 2/3 innings without allowing an earned run. I am sure you remember those two starts and the dominance of R.A. Dickey, and that was the year he won the Cy Young. So just take us through R.A. Dickey and those two amazing starts. It was like a video game, and he was just, wow.
Casey, you hit it right on the head. So one of those starts had to be the one in Tampa Bay.
Yes.
Because we went into Tampa Bay, and Josh Tolle, of course, caught all of his starts. And Josh Tolle came back to the bench, and it had to be the fifth inning. And he said, Terry, these guys, the Rays are talking to themselves. They're talking to themselves in the batter's box. And then later in the game, R.A. threw a knuckleball to somebody, and the guy dove out of the batter's box, and the ball went right over it for a strike. And the hitter himself, they started laughing. He was so dominant that the other team, they were laughing. They said, who can hit this guy? So it was unbelievable. I had R.A. on my podcast, and he's such a humble guy, and he was so good about everything. And but that was a run that I'm not sure. And again, today, if I was a pitcher who had average stuff, and he might be somebody I might call. Yeah. And say, hey, look, can you have it? Because he'd be the first guy to step up, because he made a lot of calls, in his career. He called Necro and, Tim Wakefield, guys who were knuckleball guys. R.A. said, hey, look, I'm trying to get a feel for this. And he called those guys to help him out, especially if something was going on. He was going through a bad time or wasn't getting to move like he wanted to. And so he wasn't embarrassed to call for help. And I'm shocked today that I don't see more guys trying to throw that knuckleball.
Yeah, that run was amazing. And I believe his Cy Young, he won his Cy Young that year, 230 innings, if I remember correctly, and he led the league in strikeouts. I mean, it was one of the best years, obviously, in MLB history, but in Mets history, it's up there with anybody. And Jacob deGrom.
Wouldn't you like to see somebody throw 230 innings today?
No.
Yeah, that ain't happening.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
Bill, I knew Bill was going to chime in. I mean, because Bill we're texting during Met games, and Bill be like, this guy's coming out in the 5th inning after 88, pitches? Thank you.
Come on.
Right.
Come on.
What's your opinion on that, Terry? You know, it's 2024, and the game is different, obviously.
Right.
And the bullpens obviously are made to what they're constructed by. But you guys got like a Sean Manaea, for instance, coming out 5+ innings, 88 pitches, or a Quintana.
Quintana the other night.
Yeah.
Bill, and you remember this guy. You remember Chuck Finley, Bill?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, big lefty, pitched for me in Anaheim.
Yeah.
You know, during my time in Anaheim was the first time all of a sudden I started hearing pitch counts. And we started to get documentation of, you know, what guys hit against certain pitchers after 95 pitches or 105 pitches or whatever it was. We started to document that. So I brought my pitching set. It was Kenny Hill, Tim Belcher, Chuck Finley. They were the main guys. I brought them in one day, and I sat this data down in front of him. I said, look, you know, we're going to start using some of this stuff. And Chuck was the best. He said, you know, Terry, you're the manager. You know, if you want to use this, that's your call. He said, I'm just going to tell you this. There's nights it's easy.
Right.
There's nights where my curve's working, my split's working, I'm locating my fastball, 125 pitches, piece of cake. And there's another night where I barely can get out of the first. You know, I got issues with the second. I wake up, I'm in the 3rd or 4th inning. I got 60 pitches, and I'm shot. I'm out of gas because I've had to battle my butt off to get through 3 innings. So he said, you do whatever you want. If you want to use these numbers, that's up to you. But I'm just going to tell you, those nights when it's working, I'm fine. I'll be fine. And that's the way I think, again, I look back when I had Seth Lugo. We had data that the 3rd time through the lineup, Seth got in trouble. You know, he got himself in trouble. But by the way, there were nights where he was sailing. Those guys came up for the 3rd time, and it was the 6th or 7th inning, and he was absolutely sailing. And so until the other team showed me they started centering balls on the barrel of the bat, he's staying in the game.
Of course.
I mean, that's you know, there's other nights where, God, if you give you 5, you're happy. Right. So, and I go back one of the nights. Bartolo Colon came to me. We were playing the Angels, as a matter of fact. He came to me, and he's getting knocked around pretty good. And he walked into me in his 3rd inning, and he said, listen, our bullpen is shot, and I know it. He said, don't worry about me. I'm going to get you to the 7th inning.
Wow.
Now, that's professionalism.
Yes.
You know, he's going to take a beating because he knows, hey, look, but I'm going to save those guys tonight. And in today's game, they're wearing these guys out, man. I mean, you're looking at 5-6 pitchers a night coming out, you know, into a game, and that's fine tonight. But what about tomorrow? You know, you got to win tomorrow. Tomorrow's a big game too, and so I just think they think these. You know, Bill. I know Bill pitched, you know, out of the bullpen, so you know they think they can beat these guys up. Let me tell you, you know, one thing people don't understand is these warm-ups these guys throw, those bullets that they use down warming up, they count too.
Yes, they do.
So, you know, in today's game, you got to pitch a whole inning or to 3 hitters, and you've already thrown 50, 60 pitches in that bullpen, man. And tomorrow night, you might have to come back. That's tough duty.
And even Bill, you know, we talked about it, you know, and all during our shows, all those innings for Bill in the minors where the Mets were, you know, pumping up their prospects, you know, with Izzy and Wilson. Bill, I forget, it was pitching like 200 innings. If I'm
200 innings
right?
in a minor league season.
Right.
But that's what got you ready for the big leagues.
Absolutely.
You know, last year. Yeah, last year with the Marlins, I was talking to Skip Schumacher in spring training, and they had the young Perez kid who the year before had thrown 70 innings in the minor leagues. 70.
To the big leagues, yeah.
Yeah, and so now this year he's going to the big leagues. So if he gives you 90 innings, that's a big jump in a season. Yeah. So now all of a sudden he's in the minor leagues. They bring him up and they got to send him back so he won't pitch that many innings.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's just
craziness.
It's craziness.
Like what the Mets are doing right now with Christian Scott, but he's a little bit of a different story because he was
a little different.
He was a reliever, and I get why they had to bring him back down to Syracuse.
But years ago, Bill's a perfect example. Years ago, you used to train these guys to pitch like that. I mean, these guys threw 110 pitches in spring training in the spring training game, so that first game, those 90 pitches were easy, and then you built from there. But now everybody's, oh my gosh, they're throwing 4 innings and 75 pitches in spring training, and how do you come out ready to go? I mean, you got Sandy Koufax told me, he said, my first start is all adrenaline. If I can get my second start is the one I needed to be ready. And that's why I threw 9 innings twice in spring training, not for the first start, but for the second start. And it made all the sense in the world to me.
Sandy Koufax, not bad. Not a bad lefty starting pitcher. And, I was just thinking to myself, Bill is loving this because we talk about this for 37. We've had Doc Gooden on, we've had Pete Alonso on, but old school mentality, Terry Collins, Bill Pulsifer, you guys are 2 peas in a pod,
Absolutely.
Because Bill,
it's funny because when I first came across Terry, I was the young, brash, crazy guy, and now I'm the old wily, pissed off curmudgeon guy about the way things happen. Terry, we've talked about this numerous times on pod about with guys coming into the beginning of the season and going 85 pitches their first, second, third, fourth start into what are we doing in spring training that we're not prepared to throw that 100 pitches the first time out? And then from then on, we're going 105, 110. According to the game, if I'm getting beat around or something, you're going to get me out of there. But if I'm going well, I should be ready by I remember throwing 34 and 35 innings in spring training. And now,
absolutely, Bill. You're ready to get ready to pitch.
Yeah, I mean the Mets this season, there was many times through the rotation where guys were kind of held at 85 pitches. I'm like, wait a minute, I guess they're doing things completely different when it comes to the way that they prepare in spring training nowadays, because it's definitely not how it was in my day. That's for sure.
No, and that's why I say today, if you're gonna participate in the game today, you have to adjust to what the rules are today or what the theories are. And if you don't like it, don't be there because 100%. you're gonna fight it. I look at one of the things. I looked at everybody, not just the Mets. I looked throughout baseball and all of the really good hitters who get off these horrible starts. Now, I know pitching's different. I know they're trying to 95 to 100 miles. I get that. But my God, I used to look up in spring when my guys came to spring training with the New York Mets, David Wright, Curtis Granderson, Michael Kadire, Carlos Beltran. They knew the first day they were there exactly how many at-bats that I wanted them to have. I gave them the charts. Because I looked up their numbers. Some of the best years they had, they'd get 70, 75 at bats in spring training. Now, guys are getting 50 at bats, and they think it's going to be okay. And then it's not till the middle of May where they start getting it going. It's baffling to me.
Wouldn't it be nice if it was that easy, right? You just show up every couple days, get a few at bats, throw a couple innings, and you'll be ready for the season to start. Ready for
Bill, you know better than anybody. This game's hard, man, and you got to get yourself ready, and I mean physically and mentally ready to go 162 games. It's a tough road.
Yeah, definitely. The last thing that happened on this date. I remember this well, and Terry, you were in the dugout for this one. This is a good one. 2013, 11 years ago today, the Mets showcased 2 of their young starting pitchers in a doubleheader against the Braves. In Game 1, Matt Harvey takes a no-hitter into the 7th inning and strikes out 13 batters. And then in the following game, Zach Wheeler fouled with 6 scoreless frames in his major league debut. My goodness, what a twosome there to start a doubleheader. Harvey and Wheeler. Can you talk about that day and Harvey and Wheeler as their manager and as their leader and just that day in particular?
Well, I was the field coordinator when Matt Harvey was drafted #1. So I got to meet him after we signed him and he came into the organization. We had the instructional league and stuff. And so when he finally got called to the big leagues, now, I read, because of all my time in the minor leagues, I read every minor league report. And Matt's, numbers in AAA, well, they were okay. They weren't earth-shaking, but they were okay. Well, he came up, and the animal that went to the mound in Phoenix that night, one of those nights, was not the same guy I read about. Not even close. And so now he goes and pitches this game against the Braves, unbelievably dominant. So he comes in, the next week he comes in my office and he said, TC, can I ask you? He said, why do you think it took me so long to get to the big leagues? I said, Matt, the guy I'm watching now is not the guy I read about in the minor leagues. If that guy that I see now, if you'd have done any of that in the minor leagues, you'd have been here months ago. Months ago. But without a question, he was destined, and I know injuries got in his way, but he was destined to be as good as there. I have never seen. I mean, Carlos Beltran gave him the biggest compliment at the All-Star game in 2013. I'm standing in right field. Carlos was with the Cardinals, and I said, who's the toughest guy you faced in this league? And he looked at me, and he said, the guy who's starting tonight for the National League.
Wow.
Matt Harvey. I said, you're kidding. He said, Terry, he's 97, 98. He's got a 93-mile-an-hour slider. He's got a changeup that all of a sudden just like stops before it gets to home plate, and he throws them in any count. He said, you cannot possibly go up to home plate with any game plan against this guy. Wow. And that had to be the biggest compliment Matt could ever have gotten from anybody.
Absolutely. I mean, Beltran saying that.
That's a professional hitter talking right there.
You better believe it. He's seen some good ones.
Yeah. And then I just want to, we're talking about Matt Harvey, and obviously you mentioned the injuries and everything curtailed what could have been, a Hall of Fame career with his stuff and attitude, kind of like a Jacob deGrom, if you will. So It was just a couple of weeks ago back in 2017, and you remember this well, and a lot of Met fans it's one of those games that we don't forget as Met fans. It was when deGrom was removed after the game, allowing those 8 runs in 4 innings, and he was visibly upset. And then here comes the manager of the Mets, Terry Collins, putting his arm around with the Mets down 8-4 in the 5th inning or whatever it was, and you're consoling Jacob deGrom with the long hair back then. And we just want to know, and I'm sure you've said it a million times, but for the people who haven't heard it, because what happened after that, as we all know, he won back-to-back Cy Youngs, 18 and 19. So we want to know, Terry, talk us through, what did you say to Jake? Because you could find it on YouTube everywhere. It's a monumental part of his career and Mets lore in general.
Well, I know this is a podcast, so I don't have to be really careful what I said. But
you can say whatever you want.
Who said words?
I said, guess what, big boy? Shit happens. And you know what? There are good nights and bad nights. And I said there are 2 kind of players in the big leagues. The guys who've been humbled and the guys who will be humbled. And this is okay. So we're going to go learn from this. We're going to go back. We're going to look at the tape, do whatever you got to do. But you know what? It's one start. And 4 days from now, big boy, you got to get yourself ready because you're going back out there. I don't care what you think. You can be upset, which you should be, but you're going back out there. But 4 days after that, you're going back out there again. So, shake this off, let it go, and move on. Because there's only one way to look, and that's forward. Because every single pitcher who's the greatest of all time have had bad nights. You had a bad night, and let's forget about it. And that's all I said.
And you had him for years prior, so you knew that he had that dog in him, obviously. So
I saw it. Yeah,
absolutely.
That playoff game in 2015 in Los Angeles, if that didn't show you what a competitor Jake deGrom is, nothing will.
What would you, we all remember that, what was it, Game 5?
Game 5, yeah.
When he had, out of 10, his stuff, what would you rate it? Because he gave it all, like you said.
7. Yeah, his stuff was a 7.
Okay.
But he pitched. He knew how to pitch.
Yeah.
He didn't beat himself. He didn't, just throw his hands up and say, well, I just got to throw fastball. He kept pitching. He used it. Okay, he didn't have his best stuff. He didn't have his best command, but he kept pitching, and he kept them off balance the whole game. He didn't throw fastballs in fastball counts. He made pitches with different things, and he looked up and he gave us 7 innings, or gave us 6 innings, and then he got us into the 7th when Syndergaard got us out of the 7th. But and that's what he did, and that's why he was going to be a great pitcher because he knew how to pitch. Now, when he changed his style and he found that 102-mile-an-hour fastball, the rest is history. But
Of course.
he was a great pitcher before that.
Yeah. So perfect segue. 2015. We just talked about it.
Yep.
There's a lot of similarities that I see between the 2024 Mets. We don't know how that's going to finish out. We know how 2015 went, but you guys in 15 got out to a hot start, 15-5. But then David Wright hurt his hamstring. And then the offense kind of struggled. And, and I watched all your podcasts on the Terry Collins show, with Howie Rose and everything. And the offense just wasn't there. You had the Eric Campbells and no disrespect to any of them, but the punch wasn't there. Yeah. And, we could circle all the way to the Upton home run after the rain delay where it was like rock bottom of right near the deadline. And, I'm sure you recorded with Sandy today about we got to do something, and I remember when Upton hit that home run for San Diego after the rain delay. That's when the final few months, like you talked about with Howie, it all came together because the next, 72 hours? I mean, real quick, it was the Wilmer traded for Carlos Gomez and the Terry Collins famous for who? For what? I mean, like, and then obviously the next day traded for Cespedes. So I have a couple questions that I just, rambled off about the 15 season because it really started after you got Cespedes. But, in my mind, how that season took off. But where were you? Because I will, to the day that I am, until I'm put down 6 feet under, I will remember where I was when the Mets announced that they got Yoenis Cespedes at like 4:02 p.m., at the deadline. Do you remember where you were and exactly, and just take us through that the Mets traded?
I can give you the whole day.
Please.
The game, we're in my office. I'm in my office, and Sandy and I are sitting there. We're talking about some stuff, and my phone rings in my office. It's Jim Leland, and Jim's great friend of mine, and says, how you doing? How you doing, big boy? I said, I'm doing fine. And he said, hey, I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to trade Yoenis Cespedes today. And he said, I'm calling you because you're a friend of mine, and I'm going to tell you, get him. Ooh. He said, don't. Hey, look, I don't care what you've heard, get him. Wow. This guy is a difference maker. Sandy's sitting 6 feet away from me, and I'm talking to Jim about it. And I got off the phone, and I said, that was Jim Leland. They're going to trade Cespedes. And he said, all he said was get him. And by the way, I never, ever told Sandy, we need this guy or we need that ever in 7 years. He's a smart man. He knows what we need. He knows what's available. He knows what the cost is for these guys. And so when that game was over that night, and I walked in, Sandy walked in, they always came in when the game was over, and he said, we got Cespedes. I said, you got to be kidding. And that was all on him. Yeah, Jim called, so we're going to trade this guy, and Sandy went out and got him. And we gave up a pretty good piece,
Michael Fulmer.
Michael Fulmer became the Rookie of the Year the next year, so we gave up a pretty good piece.
Yeah, I was at a pool on Long Island living there, and when I heard that, we got Cespedes? Because like I said, we all watched Tears of Joy, the MLB documentary of the season. And, the whole Wilmer Flores leading up to all this, it was a Hollywood script, Wilmer crying out there. And, take us through that day of you saying, until that phone rings in the dugout, no one's been traded. No one's coming out of the game, right?
Yeah, Sandy and I talked about it today. I said, and so I don't know what inning it was. If it was the seventh inning, it might have been the seventh inning. You could hear some rumblings in the stands, and I didn't pay much attention to it, but David Wright was not playing that night. And so he walks over to me and he said, hey, Skip, we traded Wilmer Flores. I said, what? He said, it's all over TV that we've traded Wilmer Flores. I said, we haven't traded Wilmer Flores. He said, I'm telling you, it's all over TV that we traded Wilmer Flores. I said, David, we have not traded him. He said, Terry, I'm telling you, it's already been announced. I said, well, you see that phone right there? That phone goes to Sandy Alderson. And if we traded Wilmer Flores, that phone would be ringing, and I got to take him out because he's no longer a Met.
Right.
And so, David, I'm just telling you what they're saying. Now, Wilmer's going up to hit, and the people are saying goodbye, and good luck, we love you, blah. And so now he is getting emotional. So sure enough, he goes out, and he starts crying on the field. Well, he comes off the field, and I pulled him down in the tunnel down next to the dugout, and I said, listen, You gotta straighten up here. You have not been traded. I don't care what those people are saying. Until my boss tells me you're traded, you got to get yourself ready to play. We got to win this game. And he's okay. And he's still. So now he goes out there, and it's getting worse and worse. Now the phone rings.
Uh-oh.
And it's Sandy.
Uh-oh.
And he said, "You got to get him out." I said, "Did we trade him?" He goes, "No, but he's crying."
Oh my goodness!
I got to keep him in the game. I don't have anybody else, at that time. And so so when the game was over, as Sandy always did, he handled it perfectly. When the game was over, we came off, we win. We're walking down the runway, and Sandy Alderson standing at the top step with Jeff Wilpon, and they grabbed Wilmer and they said, "You have not been traded. You are going to be a New York Met." And of course, 2 days later, it's a stinking home run that really got us going in that extra inning game against Washington.
Bam. That's exactly, and would you agree with this? That's when that season took off.
Without a question. Right. Without a question. That's a Hollywood. You could write a movie on that week. Easy.
I got chills watching that documentary with Hank Azaria, narrating it.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Yeah, the Mets were, as you know, 3 games behind the Nats. You swept them. Wilmer Flores hits that game-winning home run in the 12th inning. He's grabbing his jersey, screaming to the fans. You could read his lips. "I'm a Met. I'm a Met." You sweep the Nationals. You take over first place. You get David Wright back. He hits that home run in Philly, as you remember. And, the rest is history. I mean.
Well, I'm going to tell you, Casey, we put it away when we went to Washington. Yes. Because we swept them in Washington. In 2 of those 3 games, they were beating us pretty good. And I'm going to tell you what, our offense just took off. Neuenhuis hit a big homer off Papelbon. Sess hit a homer off the little reliever. Almost ruined that guy's career because we killed him that week. And after we went from there, we went down and took care of the Marlins, and it was over then.
Would you say when David Wright slid home, I forget if it was in Philly, and he had that adamant, fist pump with like all that emotion from David Wright, who's been hurt all year. Was that, as the captain and all, like, did that resonate throughout the team in the dugout?
One of the things that resonated was bigger than that, to be honest, Casey, was the day he came back in Philly. He'd been hurt for a long time. He just came back, came in my office in Philly. And he said, "Hey, nice to see." I said, "Man, I'm glad you're back." He said, "Yeah, me too." And he said, "Look, I just want to tell you, you guys are playing great. So don't think you have to play me. I'm just here to help. I just want to help. I don't want to step in anybody's ways." And I said, "Let me just show you something." And I reached over and grabbed the lineup card. I said, "You're hitting 3rd tonight, big boy. We're glad to have you back." And what does he do the first time up? Hits a stinking ball on the second deck. Yep. I mean, that's the Captain America. And guys in the dugout, they looked at each other and they said, "Of course he was going to hit a home run. He's David Wright."
he's Captain freaking America. Exactly.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
It could have been a Hollywood script, and with Daniel Murphy and that whole run. We got to talk about that before we get into some quick questions. But let's talk. We all know what happened. You clinched the division in Cincinnati with Darius Familia. You win it. First time that the Mets win the division in forever. And it was the start of back-to-back years of going to the playoffs. You're the second manager only to do that. Bobby V, 99 and 2000. Terry Collins, 2015 and 2016. Tell me about Daniel Murphy and that historic run. Dodgers, Cubs, obviously the World Series, you couldn't sustain that. But we'll never see that again, will we?
No, I doubt it. I'll tell you guys, and Bill knows this, when these great players get hot, they get hot. And, Murph, and I give credit to the hitting coaches. They had to put a diagram together, and they showed Murph that when he gets the ball off the ground, the damage he did. So but he had the ability to do it. He had the bat-to-ball skills that he said, "Okay, I'm going to start trying to hit the ball in the air." And look what he did. But I will go back and tell you this, Case. Yeah. One of the things that hurt us more than anything, because we were on an absolute roll as a team, were the 5 days off when we beat the Cubs to when we had to play the Kansas City, because we couldn't figure out how to stay ready. I called all the great man. How'd you guys? And I had somebody. One of the guys told me, "Oh, we flew down and played the instructional league team. Oh, we piped in crowd music or crowd noise. And finally, Joe Torre said, "I'm going to tell you what. The only thing I can tell you to do is make sure your closer's ready to pitch. I'm just going to tell you that right now." But he said, "There's nothing you can do. You cannot simulate the game action, the noise, the excitement. You can't do it. So don't think you can. Just make sure you get them ready." But I think that during that time, the adrenaline was so high in our club that 5 days we just kind of said, "Hey, when the heck are we going to play again?"
Yeah.
And we drained out of us.
It's amazing how you sweep the Cubs, right? And then you're kind of penalized with the 5 days off, which, obviously did not help when you played that first game in Kansas City. But hey, you didn't have, Joe Torre says, make sure your closer's ready. You didn't have Mariano Rivera, Come on, Joe. I mean, Mariano Rivera.
That's an easy one, right? You just have your closer ready.
Just
Mine's
have
Mo.
Just have the best ever.
Yeah, hey, Bill, I'll tell you a story one time. When I was starting to manage in the minor leagues with the Dodgers, and Walter Alston was going through the minor leagues, of course, Hall of Fame manager, and we were going through some bunt plays one day, and he comes over to me and goes, "Hey, look, I was really impressed the way you ran those bunt plays." He said, "But let me give you a little tip. You can throw those 5 bunt plays out the window. Do one and do it right." And I said, "Well, you got Koufax and Drysdale. I got Jim Smith and Bobby Jones. What the heck, Let's compare apples to apples here." So it was, yeah. Exactly. But that's, again, it comes back to the same thing, man. The talent's so good in the big leagues that, hey, look, when it's the right time, it's the right time, and you can't replace that.
And the craziest thing is, and you remember this, but I don't think most Met fans remember it. I think Murph all year in 2015 only hit like 8 or 9 home runs.
Yeah, that's what he was. I mean, he hit the ball from that line to that line. So
right, he's a 300 hitter. But then the playoffs start, and he's literally Barry Bonds. Yeah, I think.
Oh my God, without a question.
And that was fun. That was a lot of fun to watch.
And I'm sure. So you're in the dugout and you're watching in all these playoff games, and like Daniel Murphy hitting these bombs and taking over, just like Cespedes did, getting you guys there. But he's doing it against the best pitchers in the league. What are you thinking when Daniel Murphy, who hit 8 home runs all year, is hitting home runs against Arrieta, Kershaw,
Greinke? Right. I mean, we were playing the Cubs, and we'd won the first 2 in New York, and Murph hit a couple of homers. We go to Chicago, and Murph hits a big homer the first game in Chicago, and I looked at Kevin Long and I said, "Who the hell is this guy?" Where has he been? But that Murph, I love him. And he, what a performance. He deserved it.
You were up when that game clinching for the pennant in Chicago, when you were up, a lot. Murph hit that last home run for good measure. Like, he didn't need to. You were up like what was like 5-0 at that point.
Yeah.
Like Murph hit another one just because. Why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
When you're hot, you're hot.
Exactly. Oh man, 2015 was a special season. It really was. I want to ask you this question because you're a manager. You talked a lot about Jim Leland. We know how much he meant to you as a mentor and everything like that. This is going to be a tough question for you, Terry. I'm going to lay it out here. It's not going to be easy. What is your Mount Rushmore for top managers for Terry Collins? If you have to name 4.
Yeah, well, again, I can't. It's hard for me to go back before I was really involved. You mean the Casey Stengels and the Gene Mox and those guys? They were all great. In my era, I'd probably say Torre, Leland, Lasorda.
Bobby Cox.
I tell you, Whitey Herzog was tough to beat, boy. He was really good.
Those are great managers.
You've got the likes of Dusty and Buck, and I mean, there's going to be those guys. They're going to the Hall of Fame. Boch, he's going to the Hall of Fame.
Bochy's a Hall of Famer. Dusty's a Hall of Famer.
Dusty's a Hall of Famer. Buck's going to be a Hall of Famer. But those guys were all really good. They got their teams ready, and they were all different guys, all different personalities. But you know what they all did? They all won. They know how to win. They know how to win games when it was close.
And just wrapping up the 2015 season, I watched your latest episode on the Terry Collins show with Howie Rose, and I didn't know this, and obviously that's why we watch your podcast. That emotional speech that you gave at the when you clinched the pennant, and you got on the bus, and you got in front of the bus, and you said, and you want to tell everybody what you said to the players. As everybody was on that bus after you clinched the pennant in 15?
Yeah, well, we were getting ready to go to the airport to head back to New York, and I got on the bus. I said, I got the microphone. I said, I just want to make sure that everybody on this bus is supposed to be on this bus because this bus is going to the World Series. Yeah. And they all just stood up and started screaming. And, yeah.
Any tears? There's got to be tears when you said that.
For me, there was, yeah. After 50 or 40 some years of, trying to get to the ultimate, I finally got there. Yeah.
And then, I couldn't even imagine. I would get chills if I was on that bus and hearing my manager say that, like you had your way with words, as we know. Yeah. And so that would be part of that Hollywood script one day. And then just real quick, 2016, obviously wild card game. A lot of Met fans were asking me to ask you about this. Obviously, Syndergaard and Bumgarner are exchanging zeros at Citi Field. When Curtis Granderson made that unbelievable catch in center field and crashed into the wall, I'm there, standing room only, couldn't get a ticket, so I'm standing there. Curtis Granderson makes that catch in center, crashes into the wall. I turn to my dad and I go, there's no fucking way we're losing this game. Well, I mean, What were your thoughts when Grandy
Bumgarner didn't hear you.
Exactly. Connor, and Connor freaking Gillespie didn't either.
Yeah.
Right?
I'll tell you one thing. The big boy was tough. He was nasty that night. And, we all knew Madison, when it came playoff time, was dominant. And, we just couldn't get anything going against him. But that was the other thing. It's pretty funny. Jerice, he didn't give up home runs. He just didn't give up home runs. And then, in the World Series, Gordon hits a homer in the first game. We were all shocked. Yeah. And even left-handed hitters, they might get hits off him, but they didn't, his sinker was so dominant that he didn't give up home runs. So, we were just as shocked as anybody that, Gillespie hit the homer.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that game. And even that Joe Panic at bat, you remember it well. That was one of those at bats that he worked that count, and, every pitch mattered because that was a big at bat in that game. But, again, Terry's one of two managers to bring the New York Mets to back-to-back postseasons. So, kudos to you. That's legendary stuff right there. Before we get to the mailbag, Terry, we got some fans who wrote in to Shay_hello on Twitter. I just want to ask you a couple more questions real quick. This was a good one. I heard it on Sunday Night Baseball just this past weekend, Yankees-Red Sox. They asked Juan Soto while he was mic'd up, which let's not get started with that.
Yeah, no, it's not.
I already know Bill's like that too. So we're all – who made the loudest sound off the bat for Terry Collins? And these are Mets that I'm going to throw at you. David Wright, Yoenis Cespedes, Lucas Duda, Carlos Beltran, or Curtis Granderson. Loudest sound off the bat.
Wow. Well, I will tell you, it's either going to be Beltran or Cess. But I'll tell you, the ball came, gosh, that's a tough one.
I know.
When I first watched Carlos, when I first got the job, the ball just came off his bat different than everybody else. But, I might have to say Cess, because I'm going to tell you, it was a different noise when he hit it.
Oh, yeah. He won those home run derbies for a reason. Yeah. Those balls were crushed. Cess won the home run derby at Citi Field when Matt Harvey started that game.
Right.
So I guess
that's a good question, though. I will tell you, the loudest guy I ever heard, the loudest bat, was Moises Alou.
Really? With the piss hands?
Oh, man. When he hit it, it had a whole different sound to it.
Well, we could throw him in the mix. Moises Alou.
Yeah.
Very underrated.
Can I interject real quick? Because who threw the helmet at you, Terry?
No. So what happened, Bill, in that fight, Shane Reynolds was in a kind of a mix with some guys. So I went to pull Shane Reynolds off, and Moises started to hit Shane Reynolds, and Rondell White was the on-deck hitter. And he had his batting helmet with him, but he had it in his hand. So he reached out to grab Moises as I reached out to grab Shane Reynolds, and Moises hit that helmet that hit me in the face.
Oh, you got it. See, I told you it was a little. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about that?
And you know what? I had him, Bill. He played for me in Buffalo, Moises. Matter of fact, we traded him, and he was devastated about the trade. And we thought it was going to be a player to be named later, and somebody had made a mistake. And so he was going to be part of our team, and I told him, I said, I can't play you. And he said, what do you mean? I said, Mo, you're not a Pirate anymore. You can't take the place of a guy who's a Pirate. And he said, I'll play my ass off for you. I said, you play your ass off for everybody. I'm not worried about that. And sure enough, something had happened. And this is a true story, Bill. We were playing the Indianapolis Indians at the time, and they were the Montreal. And he walked from our locker room. Major League Baseball said, nope, you got to trade him. He walked from our locker room over to the other locker room and was in their lineup that night.
Wow.
Amazing.
Not only that, in the ninth inning, and he was a great outfielder, but he was going to play right field for them, and the ball went off his glove, and we won the game.
Wow.
True story.
Wow.
I loved him. I'll tell you what, of a lot of the minor league players I ever had, he might be my favorite minor league player I ever had.
Very underrated, too. I mean,
great
his career.
Great player.
Absolutely.
All around great ball player.
So right before we get to the mailbag, we're going to play a real quick game. I'm going to give you a player that you managed, and I just want to get one word that comes to your mind. The first word.
Okay.
All right? Let's start. Curtis Granderson.
Class.
David Wright.
Professional.
Jacob deGrom.
Intense.
Daniel Murphy.
A baseball player.
Oh, these are great answers.
They are. Bartolo Colon.
2 words. Let me just say, guys, there's got to be a word for him. Joyful.
Perfect word, yeah. Wilmer Flores.
I'm not sure what the English word would be, but I maybe just compassionate.
Yeah.
I like that one. Just a couple more. I know you only had him, but you had him for his batting title year, your first year on the job. Jose Reyes.
Happy.
Yeah, definitely. Always wearing that smile.
Always.
Last two. Noah Syndergaard.
That's a tough one.
I mean, you could say Thor.
Yeah, Thor. He felt, but the thing I loved about Noah is he asked all the right questions to get better, and then took it upon himself to perform at those. So, when he first came up, he was 100 pitches in 5 innings. Mm-hmm. And Danny Worthen said to him, this isn't going to work. We got to get you to have easier outs. We got to get you to get 2 and 3 pitch outs. So he taught him the 2-seam fastball, took it in the next game. Didn't stay. Look, I'm going to try it on the sideline. Took it in the next game. Taught him the changeup. Took it right into the game. So whatever word is associated with that.
How about quick learner?
Quick learner. That'd be good.
Last
I went with the studious. That's a word, right? The studious?
Yeah.
Bill's always better with these words than I am, so I'll go with Bill. Oh, you are for sure. Definitely. Last one, Terry. Jarius Familia.
Gosh, there's a word for it. It's 2 words, though. Mentally tough.
Perfect. Okay, that was a fun game. I got some goosebumps, With
I've had a lot of chills in the last 58 minutes. I'm not going to lie.
All right.
Pretty good shit right here.
Yeah, definitely. We got some questions for you, Terry.
Can I do one mailbag question before you do the mailbag? Because I want to ask Terry this.
No, Bill, you can't. Of course you can. Come on. Go ahead, Bill.
What do you consider yourself as a? I'm a Met. What do you consider yourself? All the organizations.
Well, Bill, I would have to say today I'm a Met, but I owe my career to the Dodgers.
Fair enough.
I owe my career to a man named Bill Schweppe, who was the minor league director of the Dodgers. I got released. I signed as a Pirate. I got released by the Pirates, and Bill Schweppe called me and brought me to the Dodgers. And I don't know what I did. I don't know, because I wasn't real good, but he liked me. He stayed with me. I was a player coach in AA one year, and then they moved me to AAA, and I was there for a month, and I was hitting 350. And I would end up being there for 6 years, and I was only going to be there for 10 days. And so Bill gave me all my chances to manage, to winter ball, to all those things. So, I owe my career to the Dodgers, but I look at myself today, I'm a Met.
Well, I tell you what, I look at it this way, too, is you don't have the Mets without the Dodgers. We got the Dodger blue. So I like that. I think that's pretty damn cool.
It's a good way of looking at it. You're right,
yeah,
Bill.
It's tied together. It's
Absolutely.
tied together perfectly, I think.
Yeah.
Good question. Who knew that Bill, because all the questions that we have, Terry, usually come for the ex-Major League player, So first time that Bill's asking a question. I'm impressed.
These are easy episodes for me because I just sit back and I enjoy. And I've enjoyed the hell out of this.
Yeah. Me too. We can't get to every question. There is too many. And for the sake of time, I'm just going to pick some good ones. We had a lot. So I apologize that we can't to everyone that wrote in to Shay_hello, but we'll get to a couple. We're going to start off with an avid listener. He's got a podcast, Baseball and BBQ, Jeff Cohen. He writes, Terry, most players love Jay Horowitz. How much did he help you prepare for a press conference before or after games? Did he tell you what kind of questions to expect? Any public stories you can tell the audience about interactions between you and Jay Horowitz?
Well, when I got the job, so I will tell you this, guys. Years ago, I was interviewed for the Mets job when Willie Randolph got the job. There were 3 finalists. There was me, Rudy Jaramillo, and Willie. And Willie got the job. Well, the second interview, I went back for the second interview, and Jay Horowitz, the first time I ever met him, he was involved in the second interview, and he held a press conference. He went out and got all these people from the office, came in like they were the media. And you held an impromptu press conference. The best interview I had ever been associated with, and all the interviews I was in, and I was in a lot of them for managing jobs. He was the best. When I got the job here, he grabbed me off to the side. He had put a folder together, and in the folder was everybody in the media that I was going to have to deal with. And he said, you learn who these people are, you learn their names, you learn their faces, you learn what he said, there's a description of what we think they are, changed the way I was. And so I know, I'm sure you guys saw, but in my press conferences, every question I said the sports writer's name. I would say, hey, Mike, yeah, that's a good question. Hey, Steve, that's a good question. Because now if it's not a good question, their name's tied to it. So, they just didn't throw rampant questions at me because they knew they were going to be accountable for their questions. And it all came from Jay Horowitz. I'm telling you, all of it. He said, and every night when the game was over, before I walked in that press conference, we had 5 minutes, and he would tell me what's going on Twitter, what they're talking about. So be ready for this, be ready for that. He prepped me as good as you could possibly be prepped.
Wow,
Jay is legendary.
That's some
legendary, Billy. You know that. I mean, come on. Yeah, legendary. He's the best.
Yep. That's some 4D chess right there. With the impromptu press conference. And I noticed that the media members said their name. That's just amazing. Chess right there, not checkers. We got to move on. Thank you for the question, Jeff Cohen. Talking about managers and interviews and all that, we have a question from NYMGI JK. He asks, when Wally Backman was hired, was it odd for having someone else who interviewed for the same job and he's also now managing in the organization.
No, it wasn't awkward. Number one, Wally and I have been friends for years. We were together with the Pirates. Wally was playing when I was coaching there. So I've known Wally for a long time. And then I was the field coordinator when he was managing in Brooklyn. So we spent a lot of time together. We knew each other. Now, I think probably for Wally, it was probably tough.
Yeah.
You know, when I got the job, and because he was obviously a finalist. So when I got the job and I came out of nowhere, I'm sure it was probably a little tougher for him than it was for me. But you know, I've always considered him a friend. I used him a lot. I called him all the time as the manager, just to, you know, ask about the players that he's seeing. And I will tell you a true story. When we brought up Montero and deGrom, and I told him that I was probably going to put deGrom in the bullpen and start Montero, and he said, you know, Terry, I'd do the opposite. He said, I'd start deGrom and let Montero pitch. And as you can see how it's lasted, how it worked out here later on, Montero's a great reliever, and Jake's one of the best starters in baseball. But, you know, at that time, we needed both of them to start. Well, actually, we needed Montero, and then somebody got hurt when I had to start Jake against the Yankees for his first start. But, you know, so Wally was on top of things.
Wow. And yeah, you know, most people wouldn't know that. I remember the doubleheader against the Yanks and Montero, deGrom back to back. But wow, because Montero, you know, great, won the World Series with the Astros, got paid after that year. Jake has made a great career, and who knew that Wally Backman actually had a big influence on that? That's amazing.
Yeah, he did with me. Wally was good. I'd have to call him on some things. Hey, look, we got to move this guy here, and I don't think he should just move him. Just move the guy. So yeah.
All right, thank you for the question, NYMGI. A couple more. We have Stacy NYC at Hustle Diva 1. Hi, TC. So many great memories and moments with you as the Mets skipper. Your connection with the players, the jackpot moment, your passion and honesty dealing with the media. Looking back, is there any decision you would change or do differently? What would it be, and how would you change it? Wow. That's a great question.
That is an absolutely well thought out question. And obviously there's two decisions I made, and all the decisions you have to make in my career, that when they happened, I second guessed myself to death. Johan Santana, the no-hitter night,
of course,
and Matt Harvey, Game 5. I mean, those two, the Santana one was really hard. It tore me up for a long, long time. And then the Harvey one, we had Jurice, who still, I don't care what happened in the postseason, this guy won set 52 games for us. And I had him ready, and, I just thought there was some things that went on, Bill, and I know because you were a pitcher, you get this, but, there was a time during that season where Matt didn't want to pitch much. If you guys remember, he had the press conference in Miami where he doesn't want to pitch a lot of innings, blah, 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 this and that. And at the end, I pitched him against the Yankees one day, and I took him out after 5 innings, and he was really pitching good. And he came to me and he said, forget about that. I want to pitch. And so now here we are in the World Series in the 9th inning, and he's dealing. And he said, this is my game. I want to finish it. And I said, you know what? I owe him that. I owe this kid that opportunity because he stepped up when I need him to step up. And so that's why I sent him back out there.
That's a great question and great answers.
Great answers. Great question.
Thank you, Stacy, for that question. We have time for one more. It's going to be from Jake. Jake12889. Terry, big fan. Do you still keep in contact with some of the bigger star players that you managed with the Mets?
I do. I talk to David Wright quite a bit. And obviously this podcast thing is helping out. Although, the matter of fact, the one guy I'm trying to get a hold of, I can't get a hold of, is if you can, Bill, let me know, is Santana. I got to get a hold of Santana. But I have dinner with Carlos Beltran in spring training every year. I see Cespedes a lot. Have had Murph on my show. I see Murph because we're both down here in Florida. The one guy I'm really trying to get a hold of is Curtis Granderson, because of some of the stuff he's doing off the field, which is absolutely, people would be shocked at what he's doing for South Chicago and stuff. So, but yeah, I keep track and talk to a lot of those guys.
That's amazing. It's really good to hear. Managers and players in the past having that connection years later. That's awesome to hear. So thank you for answering these questions, Terry. That means a
You
lot.
bet.
Thank you for everyone that chimed in with the questions. We apologize we could not get to all of them. We'd be here forever. But to wrap up the show, Bill and I, we always do a segment real quick, and it's called Quick Pitches. And I asked Bill 3 questions. He doesn't know what's coming, and they're not baseball related, and it's always fun. So I'm going to do that with you. You ready?
Okay, I'll try.
And these aren't, I always go hard on Bill in terms of the questions. These are
And I'm
softballs.
expected to say something completely off the wall. You don't feel obligated to say something completely off the wall.
I asked Bill, I think 2 episodes again, if you could have hands for feet or feet for hands, like we go nuts. But for you, we'll keep it light. Ready?
All right.
If you could have dinner with 3 guests, dead or alive, who would be the 3 guests?
Wow. Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King, Jack Kennedy.
Can't go wrong with those 3. Okay.
Very good.
Number 2, your favorite meal. Now keep in mind you're on death row, so you get whatever you want and all of it. So we're talking appetizer, main course, dessert, whatever you want, it's yours. What do we got, Terry?
Dover sole. We're gonna get Dover sole. It's like $100 for the 2 little fillets. But it's delicious. I love it. I get it every time I'm in New York. I have 2 restaurants that are my favorites. So, I don't eat a lot. So a salad and Dover sole and a key lime pie for dessert would be perfect for me.
There you go. I like that. Last question, and a little baseball.
And a glass of wine. That would be in there too.
Red or white?
White.
Exactly. White? Okay, white.
Goes better with fish, right? Right? White with fish?
Yeah. I'm not the wine guy, so someone will write in. I forget. Last question. If you were not in baseball for basically your entire life, what would you have done for a living, you think?
Yeah, I have a degree in education. I would have been a school teacher.
Very cool.
Very cool. I don't know what level or what anything else, but that was my degree. And I did some student teaching, and I actually love student teaching. So that would have been my career.
Well, I think your teaching you did a lot of teaching just in some athletes who are making a living doing their thing
with a bunch of grown children.
Bill, it's funny you say that. I got a card the other day because I don't have any kids. I didn't have any kids, and the card was from a friend of mine saying, "I know you're not a dad, but there's 200 baseball players who think you are." So it's it's great.
That's awesome.
That's a great card. That's gonna wrap it up. I mean, we had Doc Gooden on and Pete Alonso on. We Terry Collins. We pride ourselves on getting some great legends on our show. This was 70 minutes of just pure. I mean, Bill, would you attest to this? Because you were with me with Pete and Doc. This was fun as hell.
It was phenomenal. It was amazing, as they like to say. I mean, Terry was great. The questions were great. A lot of fun. I
Thank you.
I guess I said it's easy for me. I don't have to do a lot of talking in these episodes. I get to enjoy great historic Met stories, and Terry did not disappoint one bit at all.
Well, Bill, you and I will be sitting down here pretty soon with 2 white wines, talking about a lot of stuff here in a couple of months. So I'm looking forward to it.
Wait. I look forward to it every year.
Okay, pal. Thanks, Casey. Thanks for having me on. It's good to see you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Terry. And so with that being said, for Bill Pulsifer and Terry Collins, my name is Casey Lynn saying so long until next time on the Say Hello podcast.